The first thing Officer Miller noticed was the smell. A thick, coppery temps that clung to the back of his throat as he pushed open the unlocked front door of 114 Sycamore Lane. It was a smell every cop knew, the metallic scent of blood, grown old and stale in the enclosed space of a well-kept suburban home. The living room was a portrait of dissonant normalcy, a plush beige sofa, a neatly stacked pile of magazines on the coffee table, a large screen television mounted on the wall. But the air was cold, the silence absolute, broken only by the muffled squawk of his partner's radio outside. Then he saw it, a single, dark smudge on the cream-colored carpet near the hallway, the shape of a partial shoe print. "Detective unit to my location," he said into his shoulder mic. His voice low and tight. "We have a possible 187. The scene is not secure." The victim was identified as Eleanor Vance, a 58-year-old librarian. She was found in her bedroom, lying on her back atop the floral duvet, as if laid to rest. There was no sign of a struggle in the room, no overturned lamps or scattered drawers. Only the deep, violent gash across her throat spoke of the brutality that had occurred. The forensic team moved with the hushed precision of archaeologists, dusting for prints, photographing the body from every angle, and collecting minuscule fibers with tweezers. The initial assessment was grim. No forced entry. Nothing of significant value missing. This wasn't a botched robbery. It was personal. The lead detective, a grizzled veteran named Marcus Thorne, with eyes the color of a winter sky, stood in the doorway, his gaze sweeping the room. "She let her killer in," he murmured to his junior partner, Detective Lisa Alvarez, "or she never had a chance to stop them." The investigation began with the usual circle of acquaintances. Her co-workers at the public library described Eleanor as quiet, kind, and relentlessly private. She had no known enemies, no tumultuous relationships. Her ex-husband, David, living in a different state, provided a rock-solid alibi. The case, just days old, was already growing cold, the leads evaporating like morning mist. Then, the break came from the most mundane of places, Eleanor's landline phone records. For the 6 months leading up to her death, there was a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, like clockwork, a call was placed from her home to a single, unregistered prepaid cell phone. The calls lasted 4 hours. The last one was placed the night before she was killed. "Who were you talking to, Eleanor?" Thorne wondered aloud, staring at the printout in the sterile glow of the incident room. What was so important it couldn't be said on a traceable line? The answer came from an unexpected source. Eleanor's neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable, who spent her days watching the comings and goings of Sycamore Lane from her bay window. "Jess, the quiet young man," she said when Alvarez showed her a photo of a person of interest that he developed from bank CCTV footage near where the prepaid phone was purchased. "He started visiting months ago. Always in the evening, never stayed too late. He was here that night, you know, the night before you found her. His car was parked right there." She pointed a bony finger toward Eleanor's driveway. The man in the grainy photo was identified as Ben Carter, a 24-year-old man who had no criminal record, no obvious connection to the victim, and who now seemed to have vanished. They found Ben Carter 2 days later, holed up in a motel on the outskirts of the city. He was gaunt, with the hollow-eyed look of a man who hadn't slept in weeks. In the interrogation room, under the unblinking eye of the camera, he was initially defiant. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I didn't do anything." Thorne let the silence stretch, a tactic that made most people desperate to fill the void. "We have your phone records. Ben, the prepaid one. We have you on camera buying the minutes. We have a witness who placed your car at her house the night she was killed." Ben's bravado cracked. His shoulders slumped, and he stared at the scarred table. "I didn't kill her," he whispered. "I loved her." The revelation was a seismic shift. Ben Carter, it turned out, was the son Eleanor Vance had given up for adoption as a baby. He had tracked her down a year ago, and they had been secretly building a relationship, the weekly phone calls their sacred space to talk, to heal, to become mother and son. "We were finally getting it right," Ben sobbed, his head in his hands. "Why would I hurt her?" His alibi for the night of the murder was weak. claimed he was home alone, but there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. His fingerprints weren't in the house, and the bloody shoe print from the carpet was a size too small. The investigation was thrown back into disarray. It was Alvarez, methodically re-examining the evidence, who found the anomaly. Among the photographs from the crime scene was a close-up of Eleanor's hand. Clutched loosely in her rigid fingers were a few short, coarse, dark hairs. They weren't human. The lab identified them as belonging to a specific breed of Doga Rottweiler. Eleanor Vance was allergic to animals and had no pets. This new piece of evidence acted like a key, unlocking a door they didn't know existed. A canvassing of the neighborhood, now with a new focus on pets, yielded a critical hit. 2 houses down from Eleanor lived a man named Robert Hill, a respected, if somewhat aloof, financial advisor. And Robert Hill had a Rottweiler. When detectives approached him, he was the picture of cooperation. Yes, he knew Eleanor, but only to wave to. He was terribly sorry for what happened. He had been out of town on a business trip the night of the murder, a fact his corporate travel records and hotel receipts seemed to confirm. But Thorne's instincts, honed over 30 years, were screaming. Hill was too calm to rehearse. His alibi was perfect, airtight, in a way that real lives seldom are. The legal battle to obtain a search warrant for Hill's house and DNA was an uphill fight, but the dog hairs constituted probable cause. Inside Hill's immaculate garage, forensic technicians using luminol found what they were looking for. The floor lit up with a ghostly blue glow, revealing the outline of a large, cleaned-up bloodstain. It was Eleanor Vance's blood. The final, damning piece of evidence came from a single drop of that blood, found in the tread of a pair of work boots, in Hill's closet boots, that matched the bloody print from Eleanor's carpet. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The prosecution laid out a chilling narrative. Robert Hill, they argued, had been embezzling from his clients, including a sizable trust fund that Eleanor, unbeknownst to almost everyone, managed for her recently reunited son, Ben. Eleanor had discovered the discrepancies. She hadn't confronted him directly. Instead, she'd scheduled a meeting with him and his senior partners for the Monday after her death. Hill couldn't let that meeting happen. He had faked his business trip, returned to the city, and used his status as a trusted neighbor to gain entry to her home. The defense argued it was circumstantial, that Ben Carter, the estranged son with a shaky alibi, was the more likely killer. But then, the prosecution called their star witness. Ben Carter took the stand, his voice trembling at first, then growing stronger as he spoke of his mother, of their secret relationship, of the future they had planned. When the prosecutor asked him if he had killed Eleanor Vance, the raw pain in his no echoed through the silent courtroom. The clincher was the DNA evidence from the boot and the testimony of a forensic accountant who detailed Hill's intricate web of fraud, with Eleanor's trust fund as the central target. Robert Hill sat impassively throughout, his face a mask of calm indifference that never quite reached his cold, calculating eyes. The jury was out for less than 6 hours. When they filed back in, their faces were grim. The foreman's voice was clear and steady as he pronounced the verdict. Guilty of murder in the first degree. A collective gasp, then a sob from Eleanor's sister, was the only sound before the judge passed a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Robert Hill showed no emotion as he was led away in handcuffs, the facade finally cracking into a faint, contemptuous smirk. For the family, it was a hollow victory. Justice had been served, but it could not fill the void left by Eleanor. Ben Carter, who had found his mother only to lose her in the most horrific way, became a quiet advocate for adoption reunification services. A living legacy to the relationship they were only just beginning to build. The case of the Quiet Librarian on Sycamore Lane was closed, a stark reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not the strangers in the dark, but those who smile at you from the house next door. Their secrets, festering just beneath a veneer of normalcy, waiting for the right moment to strike.